I have a 61% win rate, and I've drafted the Spider-Man or Through the Omenpaths set over 50 times already, and these are the things that I've learned so far in my week 1 meta update. These are all the things that I'm going to cover in this video, but make sure you stay to the end because I have 2 secret archetypes that no one is talking about that can actually increase your win rate. So here are my color rankings at the end of week 1. I do think green is the strongest and blue is definitely the weakest. The reason why blue is the weakest is because it doesn't have a really good removal spell. Normally blue gets like a stun or tap down effect that works the whole game as an enchantment, but they don't have any of that this format. Instead, they have a really terrible enchantment that makes your creature a 1/1, which is so much worse than the one that made it a 0/2 defender for 1 that we had in Duskmourn. So blue is a really good support color, but definitely not one you want to be your main. The reason why I think green is the best is because it's in the 2 most powerful archetypes, green-red and green-white. Both of those have really high win rates, and also because green allows you to splash and fix so easily. So you can easily play other colors and bombs, or if you don't have enough removal, you can just splash removal from any of the other colors. I've got black next because it has really premium uncommons, and it has amazing unconditional removal in black. Next is white because it also has 2 really strong removal spells, and it plays well either as a primary color or as a support color. And then red is kind of in the middle because it's got some decent removal like shock and the deal 4, but it can't kill bigger creatures on its own. But it does play pretty nicely and synergizes with other colors. So these are my updated rankings for the best commons, and I'm going to go in the order of the best colors. And I have both the Spider-Man version and the Through the Omenpaths version on the screen here. And the reason why I have these commons here is because if you see these coming around late in your packs on the wheel, then you should probably lean towards those and think that that color is definitely open. Or if you open a really good bomb and you want to force a color like green, then you want to pair it with some of these really strong commons. And I want to point out that because of the fixing in this set, you can actually splash multiple colors. So if you are in any of the green pairs, green red or green white, I highly encourage you to splash a 3rd color, either to help you get more power at the top end or to help you get removal if you didn't pick up enough of it. That's why I think Professional Wrestler is so good. And then the Spider Manifestation of the Leyline Weaver lets you ramp out really early and play it above curve. Craven's Cats actually is really good because it's a 2-mana 2/2 on curve and it never gets blocked, and it can always trade up because it's a 4/4 if you can pump it. So it really allows a lot of your synergies. You can attack and then you can web sling it because they're never going to block your creature that's going to be a 4/4, and it just trades up all the time. And then Spider-Man or Zan allows you to ramp and fix your mana very, very easily, and if you can end web or web sling it out on 3, it just ramps you way ahead of curve. Black's best commons are the removal spells, which are pretty self-explanatory. By the way, Venom's Hunger almost never costs 5 because black is basically all villains, and it's a really good murder, right? Destroy a creature and gain 2 life. Super busted. And then I do want to point out that Swarm Being of Bees, or Wedhu? I don't know how you pronounce that, but this is one of the best creatures in black just because the Mayhem ability is so cheap. You want Mayhem cards that cost either 1 or 2, and this one has flying as well. Now, the only downside is that this thing is legendary, which is, I guess, how they nerfed it because they knew it would be too strong. So if you get to discard or connive this in any way, this is just a really awesome 2-for-1. Next is white. Of course, at top, I have the 2 really good removal spells. I do want to point out that Spectacular Tactics is just amazing. You could probably play 2 or 3 copies of this in your deck because it blanks removal spells with the first mode, and it allows you to trade up and destroy bigger green creatures or more expensive creatures for just 2 mana. And then City Pigeon enables a lot of the combos or the other parts of the deck, and also you can just put counters on this or equipments on it, and then it just takes over the game. And then it forces your opponent to kill a 1-drop, which is just crazy. And I do think the Daily Bugle Reporters or Principled Referee also is a really underrated common right now. I see this coming around late in the packs. Just look at all the value you get. You can put 2+1/+1 counters on something, or you can put a card back in your hand, like City Pigeon. So this almost always gets 2-for-1 potential. Next is red. I have all of the removal spells, as you can see here. And then I do want to point out that Knife Trick or Pumpkin Bombardment is a really good enabler for Mayhem because it's so cheap. The problem with the Mayhem cards is that you can never really play them on curve because a lot of the other discard cards either cost 2 or 3 just to make you discard it, and then you need to have mana left over in order to play the Mayhem. So this is a really cheap way of enabling it, and worst case scenario, you pay 3 mana to do 3 damage. And then I do want to point out that this 2-drop here is really good. It's got trample, it scales all throughout the game because you can just put counters on it later, and it usually always demands an answer. And then of course you get to get some free ramp here because you can also play Spider Manifestation. Next, let's talk about my archetype rankings at the end of week 1. I think green-red is the strongest color pair. I've already gotten 2 trophies with it, and it allows you to splash very easily. This uncommon here is so busted. I honestly have never lost a game when I've managed to resolve Rhino Barreling Brute because it's so much value. They're going to take 6 damage. It's also a blocker because it has Vigilance, and then you get to draw a card. And if you're building your green-red decks appropriately, you're going to have a lot of cards that cost 4 or greater. So then the next card, the next turn, you just get to draw another card. I have blue-black. I've also gotten 2 trophies with this one. This is how I got to Mythic. I drafted 2 blue-black decks back to back, and I got 2 trophies. And just because both signposts are super strong, and you just get so much value, and you can even build this either as a control deck or as more of a tempo deck. Then I've got green-white next. This is right now I think has the highest win rate on 17 lands, but I do think it's harder to put together, and a lot of people are trying to do the web or spider slinging thing just because it's the first week of the format. So I do feel like green-white is pretty contested all the time, and also it's a really complicated deck to play with the different play patterns because you have to know when it's best to web, when it's not best, and just to curve out and not put a creature back in your hand because you do lose tempo, right? Because if your creature was able to attack and live combat, then returning it to your hand isn't always the best decision because remember, you have to play it again, it'll have summoning sickness. So that's why I do think it's a little bit more difficult to play. And then down here are the 2 worst color pairs in my opinion. Blue-white, which I haven't gotten much experience with, but I can tell you none of the signpost uncommons are that amazing, which is why I have nothing here. And then red-black is definitely the worst. I've done this on 2 drafts already, and then I've also done it on F&M this week, and it was not very good. And I don't have any of the uncommons here to highlight because they're all pretty bad. So why do I think green-red is the best? Well, like I mentioned, it's got this super amazing synergy package that just works so good together. It has an amazing ramp and curve out strategy. So Leyline Weaver on 2, which gets you to Favored Fighter on 3, so you get to play ahead of curve. Or you can just play Zan and ramp yourself and fix it. And then as I mentioned before, if you're in green, you should definitely look to splash because you just get so much extra power. And look at this natural fixing package that you get. The removal spells here are not bad. Also, Shock is just so premium because you get to trade up a lot of the time. There's some 3/2s, and then there's some really important rares that you need to be able to kill, and with just 1 mana, it lets you play your removal spell and then also play a 2-drop. Galvanized Workforce, as I mentioned before, scales well in the game, especially because you're going to have all this extra mana. And then I do want to point out that Damage Control Crew in green-red is so amazing. It's a 4-mana 3/3 that either puts the best card from your graveyard back in your hand. Like so many times I've been able to put Zakao back in my hand after my opponent kills it, and then that's game over. Or you can actually use this to kill the Banishing Light, so you can exile target artifact or enchantment. I've just had so much success with this, I think you all should give it a try and make sure that you splash. Why do I think blue-black is the next best color pair? Well, besides the trophies that I've gotten with it, if you just look at these uncommons here, they're all amazing. Turl is so good. By the way, don't discard this. Just play this as the creature because it's got flying and lifelink, so they have to kill this. And most decks don't have flyers, and so this always demands a removal spell, which then means you get to then draw a card. So it's an automatic 2-for-1. And then there's so many ways to put it back in your hand, like with Tombstone. It's just one of the best cards in the whole set. So I do think this is probably a rare level uncommon. And then the other 2 uncommons here are also very good. Now this one doesn't have a good ETB, right? It's a 6 mana 4/6. But it's got flying, and 6 toughness here is key. None of the red or green removal spells have an easy way to kill this, and then on your next turn, almost all your creatures are villains. So this basically says kill this or lose the game, because on the next turn, it's going to give every one of your creatures flying, and then it's game over. So I've taken opponents down from like 15 to 0 in just 1 turn once Vulture has resolved. Prowler is also great because it gives you this flexibility where where blue-black can play more as a tempo deck and not just control. So if you get multiple copies of Prowler, you can actually build a more tempo-oriented deck like with Storm of Bees and Unstable Experiment. And then you can actually curve out pretty nicely and then end the game early because you have all these menace creatures, and then this gets bigger over time. I do also want to point out this really cool combo where any card that lets you connive, you can discard Swarm Being of Bees, and then it basically gets you a 2-for-1 because you're not losing value on the discard anymore. And remember, it's so cheap with the mayhem cost of just 1. And I do think Unstable Experiment is great. I think you should play up to 2, no more than 2. Whoosh is also really good. Just make sure you don't just run this out for tempo. Try to blow them out with a combat trick or to save one of your creatures or something like that. And then it's even more devastating if you get to kicker it. as well. And then whoosh is great because if you also want to play the counter spell, then you can also just whoosh if there's nothing that you wanted to counter. And then I also want to highlight the overperformer here, Tombstone. This card is an absolute house. It's almost always a 2-for-1. I highly recommend you take as many copies of this as you can. Yes, it is legendary, but you can just trade with this or just attack with your opponent with it and then have it die and then just play another one. And then they do loop over and over again as well. And it also discounts your villains. Next, let's talk about green-white. Now, it's got a really amazing synergy package, and this is really the only deck that will want City Pigeon, and so you can get these pretty uncontested, and it's just such good value. I also want to point out that Spider Girl, Legacy Hero, is a really overvalued and statted card that I just think is so amazing. The reason why is because it's a 2-mana 2/2 with flying, which is insane, and then when it leaves the battlefield in any form, you get a 1/1. So it's just basically a 1.5 card every single time. And then if you're in green-white, you're the only color pair that can use Gallant Citizen or take this card. So if you see this coming around late, it could be a signal that green-white is open. And then the other signpost uncommon is also amazing. It Wemslags out for 3, which is super cheap. And then it demands a removal spell, because if not, you just get to put +1 counters and flying on your creatures, and you can easily run away with the game. And again, don't be afraid to splash, because you have this package here with Favored Fighter and Zan. Now, why do I think black-red is so bad? And trust me, I've tried this format, or tried this color pair in both the sealed format at my pre-release and at FNM this week, and I was the only one in red-black in my entire pod, so I got all of the uncommons for it, and I can still tell you that it's not great. I got 2 wins and I lost in the finals. And the reason why this color pair is so bad is if you look at these uncommons for this archetype, the stats on these are absolutely horrible on their own. So Green Goblin is a 5-mana, 3/3 flying death touch. Super understated. If it's got flying and death touch and 5 mana, it should probably at least cost 4. It should be a 4/4 or have some ETB. Again, no ETB. You have to wait until your next turn. Also, this has to attack in order for you to discard, and discard is not optional. You must discard a card, even if you don't have something you want to discard. So it's really bad on offense and really bad on defense. And then you have Shriek, which is also terrible. It's a 3-mana 2/3. Doesn't even pass the vanilla test. And again, you get no ETB because you have to wait until the beginning of your next turn at the beginning of the next main phase. And then you don't even get anything. All you get is to make a target creature not block. You don't get a +1/+1 counter. You don't get to draw a card when you discard. It doesn't do anything. It has a static ability, but again, this is an understated creature. You're basically taking turn 3 off. It's so bad. And then you have this uncommon here, which makes you think that it's great, right? You should take this because it's got Mayhem. Look at the Mayhem cost. It costs 3. You'll almost never get to play Raging Goblinoids ahead of curve. And that's why this card is so bad. You end up playing this on turn 5 anyways. So what's the point of having Mayhem on this card? And also, remember, it's understated. It's a 5-mana 5/4. So 4 drops, like Favored Fighter, can trade with your 5-drop that has haste. So this also really bad. And then they gave you this other uncommon, which is basically a dual colored, right? This is only for red-black, which is Hobgoblin. It's got flying and haste. It's only a 1/2 for 2, and whenever you discard a card, it gets +2/+0. There is no instant speed discard in this set, so you cannot use this as a blocker, which means this is aggro only. It's a terrible top deck, and it only becomes a 3/2 if you can discard on your turn. And again, this is just so bad. Now, Swarm of Bees is also good, because it's got the cheapest Mayhem cost of 1, but I want to point out it's legendary. So there's also been so many times where I already have a Swarm of Bees out because I was able to Mayhem it out early, but then I have another one in my hand and I can't play it because it's legendary. So that's what makes this so bad, even though it's the best one. And then again, I've also tried Ultimate Green Goblin, and as I said in my Best Rares video, this is a trap. You must discard a card every single turn. And there will be a time where you run out of Mayhem cards. I got to Mayhem 1 card the first time, and then after that, I was 2-for-1ing myself every single turn. Do not play this card. Okay, let's talk about the secret archetype, and the first one that I'm really excited about is blue-red. And the reason why I think this is actually very viable is because the Spider-Man rare here actually tells you kind of what it wants to do. At the beginning of your end step, if you've played a land or cast a spell this turn from anywhere other than your hand, aka Mayhem, then you get to deal damage to any target based on this creature's power. And it's a double striking vigilance. Unfortunately, you can't play it until turn 4, but I think it has a super sweet package here. So Unstable Experiment, which I mentioned, is such a good card because it's almost always a 2-for-1, sometimes a 3-for-1 if you get to discard something with Mayhem. And remember, red has all the good Mayhem cards, so you can Unstable Experiment into Spider Islanders or Electro's Bolt, and blue does have one Mayhem card, which is the Chameleon, which is also a very good. And then with all of this discard effects, with all the Connive, Doc Ock gets online super early, and Doc Ock is so busted, by the way. It is a 5-mana, 8/8 hexproof, basically. So I do think this is a very valuable archetype. I'm hoping that I can draft this one time, and then I'll post a video. My second secret archetype is Black-White, and that's mostly because it has 2 amazing bombs. So if you get either of these, you should definitely look into it. The Mr. Negative, which is really excellent. Try to take as much damage as you can, and then just play this card on turn 7. Swap your life totals, and then Alpha Strike them back. Spot Living Portal is also a really amazing bomb. And the reason why I think Black-White has so much viability is just because it has the best unconditional removal package in the entire set. So the Banishing Light, Venom's Hunger, Spot's Portal, Sudden Strike, Spectacular Tactics. All these are unconditional removal spells that trade up for mana, can easily kill the other bombs in the set, and you have Scorpion Sting as well. So this is definitely a good archetype. You don't need any synergies. Just take all the best value cards, all the best creatures, all the best removal, and then just play a normal mid-range deck, and you'll get amazing results. So put down in the comments, what are the trends you're seeing right now after the first week of Spider-Man? And let me know if I got anything wrong in my color rankings or my archetype rankings. And make sure you click subscribe because I'm going to have tons of Spider-Man gameplay videos. Hopefully I can put some of the secret archetypes that are up. I've also gotten many trophies this format, so you can watch those drafts and kind of see how I've navigated the gameplay and the drafting segments to see how you can improve your win rate as well.